The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Monday, May 1st, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. It is May Day, where we celebrate labor and workers all across the globe, workers of the world uniting to ensure that their rights are protected against, well, the onslaught of the desires of capital. Capital has a desire to minimize the amount that it pays labor. It just does. That's the nature of capital. And so it is always incumbent upon us to unify in solidarity with other workers, no matter what bracket of work you're in terms of finances. One thing I've always tried to ensure people understand is that if you use your labor, if you make money off of your labor, you get up and you have to go and clock in somewhere. You are a laborer. I don't care how much you make. At the end of the day, if you stop using your physical body to do your work, you will not make a living. So unless you are living off of capital gains completely and entirely, you are dependent on your labor, and therefore we should have cross-demographic, cross-financial brackets, solidarity with every single person who works. Now, that said, let's jump into some of the news that is happening. And I think this next story, or this first story, is really a bellwether story for just how depraved this political system really is, while simultaneously trying to convince us that they are the party of life that cares, that the party of compassionate conservatism, etc., the party that loves Jesus so much. The Texas governor, Greg Abbott, in the aftermath of yet another mass shooting where multiple people were killed over the weekend, decided to take to Twitter, and instead of sending the standard thoughts and prayers, which are themselves meaningless and useless because their prayers don't make it any further than their ceilings, right? They don't. Faith without works is dead. You could pray all you want. If you're not going to actively do something to change the situation, then your prayers are completely and totally meaningless. But Greg Abbott didn't just stop with thoughts and prayers. He decided to use this as an opportunity to forward his anti-immigration bigotry. And this is what he said on Twitter, quote, "I've announced a $50,000 reward for information on the criminal who killed 5 illegal immigrants Friday. Also directed Operation Lone Star to be on the lookout. I continue to work with state and local officials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." He decides to label the people who were killed as illegal immigrants because, well, that's what's most important to Greg Abbott in this moment. He could not possibly share condolences. He couldn't even give thoughts and prayers to these people. And turns out he was wrong. They were not all, quote unquote, illegal immigrants. One of them was a resident of the United States, as evidenced by the husband of the victim having to share her state ID, showing that she was a resident. But that didn't matter. It was so bad that even Twitter community notes, which are posted onto tweets that are ostensibly wrong, they had to post and say that this was not accurate. But besides the inaccuracy of it, does it matter that the people who were killed were illegal immigrants? What does that do? See, he didn't have an opportunity to call the killer an illegal immigrant because that's the story that they're used to being able to spin. If someone who is in the United States undocumented commits a crime, they are more than happy to elevate the fact that that person was undocumented, quote unquote, illegal. But because he can't do that in the story, he had to find a way to not, first of all, to not bring any accountability to the gun manufacturing industry, the NRA, because we are under siege in this country. We are 100% under siege by the NRA and gun manufacturers who are able to flood our streets with as many weapons as they possibly can create, and we are dying as a result of it. But instead of having that conversation, which he is paid not to, Republicans are paid not to have the conversation about the dangers of all of these hundreds of millions of guns that are on our streets every single day. They're paid to protect the gun manufacturers, not the lives of children. And I don't care how many times they try to make it seem like all of this anti-trans, anti-drag stuff is about protecting the lives of children. when we know better, because we see what they do when this leading cause of death amongst children, which is guns, handguns, weapons, mass shootings. They literally do nothing and throw in the towel and say, there's nothing we could do about it. This is the reality of it. The cruelty is the point, and this to me is a bellwether. This shows me that we have leaders in power who are so committed to their bigotry. Not only do they not care about telling the truth, but they are completely and blatantly open about their bigotry, even in the aftermath of people being killed, even when they are supposed to be performative at best. We know they're never going to do anything about guns, but they usually perform and say, we want to send our thoughts and prayers. But as soon as they had an opportunity to vilify, to dehumanize the victims of this mass shooting, Greg Abbott, who you would think would understand a little bit about compassion and grace and mercy, all things considered, decided to show how evil he is. Well, turns out that all of the attacks on the LGBTQIA community, particularly the trans community, in this moment, we are living in an unprecedented assault on the LGBTQIA community, because conservatives genuinely believe that they can get enough people who hate trans people to get some kind of bigoted solidarity. Now, they're not doing too bad of a push. I mean, honestly, the number of people who are coalescing around their hatred and fear of the LGBTQIA community really does give a little credence to their theory. And that theory is that they can create a coalition of people, a diverse coalition of people who unify around their fear and bigotry and hatred of the LGBTQIA community. This is why you're starting to see more brown people, more black people who are coming out boldly as, well, just anti-LGBTQ bigots, and they're aligning their ideology with white supremacy, because that's where they get a chance to express all of their deeply seated hatred of the LGBTQIA community. Well, it turns out that while this strategy has been extremely effective for the far right and coalescing of the far right, it has not played well at all for the average American, because, well, the average American probably just wants everyone to be able to live their lives as freely as they can, so long as they're consenting adults. Ronna McDaniel, whose last name actually was Romney McDaniels, who was a former chair of the Republican Party, was on Fox News discussing the fact that the GOP is now in trouble because polling shows their relentless attack on the trans community is not actually popular with Americans. Take a listen in.
I want to quickly ask you about cultural issues, because we've got some new polling on this. On the issue of trans issues, polling higher is people are more worried, voters are, about attacks on trans families than they are about trans people competing in sports. When asked about issues involving schools, the top concern you can see here was book banning. Now there's word major donor to the GOP, Peter Thiel, is unhappy and is going to hold his money out because he doesn't like these debates about abortion and trans and bathrooms and all of that. Are you worried that these cultural issues are hurting the GOP?
Well, one, the Democrats are using this word book banning. You're seeing it a lot. You saw it on Biden's launch. That's a lie. There isn't book banning. What Republicans are doing are protecting our children and parental rights and saying 5-year-olds shouldn't be reading sexually explicit material. Ron DeSantis went in front of cameras and read some of these books, and the news stations had to go away because the material was so explicit. But now we know their game plan, right? We can have a conversation about issues, and really what it is about is parents should have a say in what's happening with our kids. And I think most Americans support that, but it's good to know the Democrats' playbook, and we're going to push back on that, especially coming from a Democrat Party that is banning freedom of speech, that is canceling people, that is destroying your life if you don't think with their orthodoxy. This is a Democrat Party who is saying if you think outside of the box of everything we are dictating to you, we will make you lose your job, we will destroy you. So they're banning people. They're banning freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Republicans are protecting children.
All right, we will see you on the campaign trail. Much to come ahead.
Yeah, protecting children not from gun violence, which is one of the leading causes of death. No, not protecting children from priests and pastors that have a history of assaulting and grooming and molesting children. Nope. They're not going to investigate the Catholic Church. The FBI is having to do that. They're not, the Republican Party is not going to check their own churches, not just the Catholic Church, the Southern Baptist Church. Nope. Because they think that those things are okay. They protect these people. They protect those priests. They protect those pastors. But they want to protect your children from books in a library. That, God forbid, there's something in the library that just makes you uncomfortable, right? Let's start there. The fact that are we really saying that the only books that can be published and put inside of a public library or even a school library, because these people do not want to have a say about what's going on in their children's lives. They want to control what's happening for every other child. They don't want to just control their own family. They don't want to just, quote unquote, protect their own family. They want to force every family to not be able to consume anything that they do not approve of, to not engage in any behavior that they don't approve of. They need full, complete, and total domination over your life, particularly as it pertains to, quote unquote, sexual morality. And I put that in quotations because we know they have no morality whatsoever. It's about approving of what they like and disapproving of what you do. That's what this is all about. But at the end of the day, most Americans are getting tired of the way that these people are coming after the trans community, as if these people don't have the right to exist. Who? The trans community, right? This is where we are. We're talking about people who are calling for the explicit genocide of a group of people. And this is really where, I mean, we really should draw the line much further back, right? We shouldn't have allowed this to get to the point where these people can publicly talk about executing and genociding a group of people because they don't approve of their lifestyle. They don't approve of their decisions and their choices. We should have stopped this a long time ago, but now we're at the place where they are comfortable. Conservatives are so comfortable with their public hatred of the LGBTQIA community that they are calling for public executions. And I put the emphasis here because while some people may waddle in their bigotry, I really just have to wonder, how far are you going to go with this hatred? Do you hate the LGBTQIA community so much that you want to publicly execute them? Is that where you are? Because if that's where you are, then I really have to question who and what you really are. I don't care what race you are. I don't care if you're black. If you are comfortable with people calling for the public executions of the LGBTQIA community, I don't care what you believe. You are evil. You are. You cannot sit by and either directly support or indirectly condone this type of violence that is fomenting around this country, all because you're uncomfortable with someone else's lifestyle, all because you don't approve. The Bible tells you this, the Bible tells you that. So is this where we are now? Because this is where the line is being drawn in the sand. This is you may not see this in your day-to-day life because, well, it's hidden behind the internet. It's if you have your own bubble where you're just going to work and you're going home and the only thing you really know about what's happening is what you hear on the news or what you may hear on a podcast, then you may not be aware of exactly how violent it is right now to be a trans person, how much violence they face. And so now the question is, if you are aware of this violence, are you okay with this violence and these threats of genocide simply because you don't approve of someone's lifestyle? And see, this is what we need to know. This is what you need to know about your friends. This is what you need to know about your family members. Because if you really want to know who's going to fall on the side of fascism, you can't wait until it's an issue that's critical to them. You have to look and see at an issue that they could potentially be bigoted on. Let me say that again. Of course, people, if somebody is dealing with a racist and the Klansman, of course, any black person in their right mind, unless they're Clarence Thomas or Candace Owens, is going to say we need to stand up and fight against that person. But when it comes to the LGBTQIA community, you're going to pick off quite a few black people who allowed their bigotry. And I'm using black people because I'm black, but we can go through every single community, whether it's white, whether it's Asian, whether it's Hispanic, it doesn't matter. We can go through every community and find this level of bigotry. I'm just speaking about my own, just like you need to speak about your own. And if we came to the black community, we would see how many people are picked off where they would fight against white supremacy. They are picked off and they neatly fall into the category of people who hate the LGBTQIA community. And I'm just curious if your hate goes so far as to allow you to condone or actively participate in this violent time that we live in where they're calling for the genocide of the LGBTQIA community. I hope that your humanity is sufficient enough to take a stand against that.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
Here we go. Very special thank you to two individuals. They're already patrons, but they sent some love via Cash App, and I want to take a moment to thank you. Lateef, thank you, my brother. And Perry A, thank you so much for your contribution. This entire patron party is for the two of you. Here we go. Yep. You too can get your own personalized shout out by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our bi-weekly patron party, which I think one is coming up this week. Patreon.com/The BPD Show. And we will be back right after this commercial break, unless you are a patron. Yeah.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Yep.
Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Go back. I want to play a clip from Real Time with Bill Maher. He was interviewing none other than the genius himself, Elon Musk, Friday night. And I want you to listen to this exchange. I described it on Twitter as watching two Neanderthals trying to understand the wheel. And I think I owe Neanderthals an apology. But listen to the vapidness of this conversation between two rich, white, old, liberal, so-called liberal men. Elon thinks he's a classical liberal, but at the end of the day, we see that they're neither intelligent. They just simply do not have the cognitive capacity to hold some of these conversations. But once you get graded on the curve because you inherited money and turned that emerald money into billions, you get to come off as everyone describing you as a genius, even though at the end of the day, you can't even define the very thing that you created, the woke mind virus. Listen to Elon Musk, who came up with the phrase the woke mind virus, unable to explain what it means in this painful 2 minutes of Bill Maher. Listen to
this woke mind virus. How did it start? Was it bats? Was it a escape from a lab? I mean, what is your assessment of what? Because it's fairly recent. How did it start and why?
I was trying to figure out where it's coming from. I think it's actually been a long time brewing, in that I think it's been going on for a while. The amount of indoctrination that's happening in schools and universities is, I think, far beyond what parents realize. And I sort of came to realize this somewhat late. The experience that we had in high school and college is not the experience that kids today are having, and hasn't been for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 20 years. So,
aren't parents themselves also a big part of the problem?
I suppose in some cases that parents, but I think like the parents are just generally not aware of what their kids are being taught, or what they're not being taught.
But they're letting the kids think that they're equal.
I mean, yeah.
You heard that right.
Let me give you an example that a friend of mine told me, which his daughters go to college go to high school in the Bay Area, and he was asking them, like, well, so who are the first few presidents of the United States? They could name Washington, and I said, well, what do you know about him? Well, he was a slave owner. What else?
Right. Exactly.
Nothing.
Right.
I'm like, okay, maybe you should know more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Please
is
clap.
the woke mind virus. Exactly.
Please clap. That I'm sorry. Just on multiple levels, folks. White supremacy is not impressive, because that's what you see right there on that stage. You have Bill Maher, who is leaning into his own version of white supremacy, he's been doing this for a little while. He's been creeping further and further, moving from being this cosmopolitan, elitist liberal to now just embracing the far right. And Elon Musk, who's just made it clear his intentions by all of his activities on Twitter. If you don't know whose side Elon Musk is on at this point, I don't know what to tell you. But despite that, isn't it clear that there's not a cogent thought between the two of them as it pertains to this? It's like you have created this entire boogeyman of the woke mind virus. And it reminds me of that clip with Brianna Joy Grave, where she asked the reporter or the journalist, whoever that was she was interviewing, she said, define woke. And she proceeded to melt down because she couldn't define it. They have no definition for this because it is meaningless drivel that gives them the opportunity to attack anything that remotely becomes a challenge to their white supremacist power structure. I mean, that's at the end of the day, the woke mind virus, quote unquote, woke mind virus, is anything that goes against the white male Christian power structure in this country, on this planet, period. They won't define it that clearly, but anything, whether it be history books, whether it be a commentator, a politician, whether it be a policy, anything that remotely moves the ball towards progress and away from the white male Christian power structure, that's what they consider to be the woke mind virus. But when you asked him about, he was in a safe space. Elon Musk was in a very safe space, but he couldn't gather thoughts enough to put together a coherent sentence to demonstrate that he's actually had any meaningful thoughts about this at all. And this is the guy that the world is looking to save humanity? This is the guy who's going to take people to Mars? Because this is where he's investing a significant portion of his life, like $44 billion of his life has been invested into this culture war campaign to try to fight back against the so-called woke mind virus, and then he can't even define it. He can't even string together a coherent sentence. And yet, he is the genius of all geniuses. Elon Musk is such a waste of a billionaire. Can we just start? If we must have billionaires, couldn't we have billionaires who are at least actually intelligent and not just given the label of genius because, well, he has a good PR team? The best thing about Elon Musk are his lawyers and his PR team. He was able to muscle his name onto the co-founder status of Tesla, even though he did not co-found it. So he definitely has great lawyers. He definitely has great PR representatives, but a genius? I am not too sure about that. He sounds like another mediocre white male who has benefited from wealth that he inherited that was generated through exploitation and oppression, quite literally. But it's the best. He's the best that Western chauvinism can do. Elon Musk is the best that Western chauvinism can do. And so, of course, they're going to hold up their poo and say, aren't you proud of us? That because we're supposed to be celebrated. We're supposed to be so grateful for Western civilization, for Western chauvinism, because ostensibly it gave us everything that we have. And we wouldn't even have the internet if it wasn't for Western chauvinism. And they're holding up Elon Musk as the grand prize. Here is the apex. This is the creme de la creme of Western chauvinism. And they want us to pat him on the head and say, good job. You're such a genius, Elon. Look at you. You made a boom boom. I've been covering the attacks that I believe are coming from Moms for Liberty in the state of Florida, actually all across the country. Moms for Liberty has been targeting superintendents. Their game, their strategy is to operate on the school board level and to bring conservatives, far right-wing conservatives, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers to the school boards across this country. And they have fixed their eyes and their targets on several black superintendents. Last week, I covered the story in Jacksonville about them targeting Dr. Diana Green, very successful black woman superintendent in Duval County. I used to teach in Duval County, and so I got involved, and I had a chance to go and share some thoughts as to why I think this is happening. And this is me speaking at the school board meeting, special school board meeting that they called as they were trying to oust her. I had a chance to say the following. Take a listen in.
As I talk to my children about life, the one thing that I try to encourage them to do is engage in truth. Truth is I probably shouldn't have taken my mask off because we're still in a pandemic, despite many people not believing it. And I believe that that is a part of the reason we're here. The other reason we're here is because there's a coordinated effort across this country, without question, targeting superintendents, particularly black superintendents, by organizations that have some representatives here today. I can't call names, so I won't. And as you begin this investigation into the distinguished career of the superintendent, I would encourage you to do additional investigation to see the hand behind what's going on. This is a political witch hunt, without question. And as I teach my children, if there's a hunt going on, you need to find out who's doing the hunting. Who are the people who are encouraging this? Who are the people who are the invisible hand that is trying to make this happen? Because I guarantee you, you will find that they are in lockstep with an administration that has declared a war on public schools, an administration, a governor who has declared war on blackness in the form of saying woke, a governor who has declared war on the most marginalized in our community, including the LGBTQIA community. And I say that as a man of faith, a man who stands on morality. We will not allow this division to come in any further, and this is the place where we are going to take a stand. So rest assured, we do have an idea of who's behind this. We do have an idea whose fingerprints are all over this. Even though they may have pudding on those fingerprints, we do understand exactly what's going on, and we are here to stand not only with the superintendent, but to let people know we're not going to sit down and take this lightly. We know the organizations, we know them, and we're going to stand against them.
Old pudding fingers. We know who you are, Ron DeSantis. We know who's behind this. We know that Ron DeSantis has targeted 12 districts, superintendents, and he's targeted them because they stood against him when he tried to ban wearing masks. This is what it's sourced back to. The original incident that got so many out of 12 superintendents that defied his no mask requirement. These 12 superintendents who decided to have their children masked anyway because we were in a pandemic, of those 12, only five Florida superintendents remain that dare to challenge Ron DeSantis on his no masking policy. So we understand exactly who's behind it, and he's getting assistance from groups like Moms for Liberty, and their agenda is clear. They are going county by county, state by state, executing a far-right agenda at the ground level. They are the boots on the ground. Moms for Liberty, they are the boots on the ground. They have mastered the art of weaponizing white woman care and tears. And they're using this as an opportunity to not just gain and amass political power, but to execute their vengeance. I mean, they are targeting people who had the nerve to stand up against Ron DeSantis and say, yes, we want our children to mask during a pandemic. 7 of the 12 superintendents who said that have been removed. And now they're working on Dr. Diana Green, in the city of Jacksonville, the county of Duval. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But more specifically, we're going to keep our eyes on Moms for Liberty, because while their name sounds nice and sweet and innocuous, we understand that they are highly efficient political operatives from the far right disguised as soccer moms. So we know better, and we absolutely have to make sure that we hold the line against them. Patrons, stay tuned. Everyone else, We'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
We'll make it up. You put us together. We'll make it up. You put us together.